You guys probably saw this news that there was a big raid in Syria that took out an ISIS leader. I'm going to totally butcher his name. I'm sorry, but his name is Abu Ibrahim al-Hashimi al-Qurashi.
Quraishi.
That's Quraishi.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Was killed Wednesday. I'm reading from CNN right now. During a U.S. counterterrorism raid in northwest Syria. Biden announced that on Thursday morning. Biggest U.S. raid in that country since the 2019 operation that killed the last ISIS leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. So what the U.S. says, what they claim, without evidence at this point, is that he blew himself up as U.S. forces approached his compound, and that self-immolation or suicide bombing resulted in multiple civilian casualties. However, there's a lot of facts that don't add up here. The number of civilian casualties that the U.S. is claiming does not match what independent organizations on the ground are saying the number of civilians that were killed during this operation. And so once again, on the very same day that we were having pushback over the whole Ukraine situation, we also had some pushback from reporters about the narrative that the White House was laying out with regards to how this raid exactly went down. Let's go ahead and put this tweet up on the screen. Aboard Air Force One, a reporter asked White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki for evidence to back up the claim that Quraishi detonated a suicide bomb. Psaki responds by asking whether skeptics think the U.S. military is not providing accurate information, and ISIS is providing accurate information. Let's go to the next tweet. The reporter did not back down. That reporter said, I mean, the U.S. has not always been straightforward about what happens with civilians, and I mean, that is a fact. Great points there. Let's go ahead and put the next piece up on the screen. So this shows the discrepancy. The Syrian civil defense group, the White Helmets, says that 13 people were killed in the raid. Meanwhile, the Pentagon spokesman John Kirby says that 4 civilians and 5 combatants, that would be a total of 9 people, died during the operation. So there's a discrepancy already from the jump about how many civilians were actually killed, not to mention no actual evidence provided that the civilians who were killed were actually killed by Quraishi and his suicide bomb. So it's another instance where typically for years and years, everyone in the press would just parrot whatever the official line was, no evidence needed, yay, go USA, and they would move on. This is a very rare instance of a reporter who's saying, listen, I hear your narrative, but I would like to see some evidence here. And of course, we know from, and what this reporter alluded to, we know from lots of reporting from The Intercept over many years, recently from the New York Times, that the number of civilian casualties is dramatically higher than they've ever acknowledged, that there are few precautions put in place to avoid civilian casualties, that they're covered up after they happen. And of course, we saw that horrific case in point of what happened with that drone strike in Afghanistan.
Yeah. I mean, look, if you have evidence, you have to release it. And, you know, the reporter is correct. I have no sympathy for Abu whatever al-Quraishi. I have also don't put it past them to blow up a bunch of kids. But the White Helmets, and this is the other problem, White Helmets, a State Department funded thing. You know, a lot of people have called them, you know, propagandists themselves in the past, so it's hard to believe. But, you know, in general, they try to save civilians, and they put out a lot of videos during the Syrian civil war. Even they are saying that there's a lot more casualties. Okay, I mean, maybe ISIS killed them. You have to tell us. And I don't believe them. Should you? How many stories we've done here on the show? Blowing up that dam in Syria, lying about it. Obviously, the ISIS drone strike, lying about it, botching it, covering it up, not punishing anyone. Look, maybe they killed some civilians. Admit it. I mean, you know, it's the fog of war. It may even be understandable, but you have to admit to it. Why don't you say anything? And what was the planning behind this operation? That was the other problem, is that Biden was trying to turn this into some Osama bin Laden moment. Trump did the same thing with Baghdadi. It's like, look, neither of these guys even compares to Osama. Like, it's not even close in terms of the direct relationship, you know, the way Americans feel about it, all of that. And they try to use it as some like chest-beating moment to gin up their own popular support, which I personally found very gross.
Well, I do think the timing of it is noteworthy here because obviously Biden under a lot of pressure here. things, not going that well with Ukraine, things not going well with COVID, things not going well with the economy. And so, yeah, this was a nice way to try to put a feather in his cap of we got the bad guys. Meanwhile, you also killed a bunch of kids.
Do you remember the 2012 Joe Biden speech at the Democratic Convention? Bin Laden is dead and GM is alive. He said it over and over again. This was a huge political benefit to Obama at the time when he was running for re-election. It's kind of hard to remember, but that was Biden's whole thing. He was like, we killed Osama. He said it over and over and over again in his speech. You should go and watch it, if not just to see how different he was at the time. The reason why all this matters is that it's fuzzy and we shouldn't trust these people whenever they make claims. I do want to say though, and this just bothers me, it took the war in Afghanistan and like the collapse of Kabul before everyone's eyes and the military's lives over the last 20 years for these people to wake up and be like, okay, hold on a second.
Maybe we should ask more questions here.
Yeah, we should ask more questions. Okay, I shouldn't cry tears that it's coming now, but it's like, hey, we could have saved a lot of people if this had happened in the past. I will say this, it shows you how weak they ultimately are. Nobody believes them anymore, and you shouldn't. They've lied to our faces over and over and over again. Also, what are all these troops doing in Syria in the first place? I don't remember having a conversation around that one because, they didn't just come in from Iraq or wherever. There's a base of like a couple hundred guys who are just sitting in Syria. It's 2022. We killed Baghdadi in 2019. The caliphate collapsed in 2018? Are we just now going to sit in Syria forever? By the way, the Syrian government doesn't want us there. I'm not saying I like Assad or whatever. It's his country. He won the civil war. Okay? Fine. So listen to them. This is the thing I don't really seem to understand. Congress is supposed to authorize these types of occupations and invasion of a foreign nation. I mean, we should have a conversation around that. And then they just do these little operations here and there, and they hope that we don't hear about it. And when we do hear about it, everybody's supposed to chest beat. But every once in a while, a little bit of information, thanks to the internet, starts to squeak out. And, we learn about Niger. You're like, hey, what happened in Niger? What was all that going on there? How did these 4 guys end up in the middle of the desert and one of them gets shot with no air support on some crackpot mission? Also, why are troops in Niger in the first? Somalia, Yemen, the very first week of Trump's presidency, Navy SEAL gets shot in the chest in Yemen on some crazy kill capture mission against Al-Qaeda where also a bunch of kids were killed. No questions. I mean, this has been happening for a long time. I would just put it in that context.
Yeah.
These reporters, they've let a lot of this slide.
Oh,
and I was there.
Well, and let's not oversell it. This is one person.
Yeah, right.
Who's like, hey, I want to see the evidence. But it says a lot about how much they've been exposed. That you even have a single reporter who's willing to say, your narrative about the suicide bomb, maybe it's true, but I don't
put it past them.
We don't put it past them, but that there's even just a question of like, well, let's see the evidence because you people will tell us whatever is most convenient for your storyline. The Niger example is a great one because there's been even more information to come out about, they tried to blame the dead basically.
I know, yeah. They're like,
it was
went
a
off
rogue
on their own.
mission. And then come to find out, no, it wasn't.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't. This was authorized from the top. You all just don't want to have your hands dirty on something that went so horrifically wrong. So tiny little bit of skepticism here is nice to see.
Yeah.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut. Our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions. All that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.